Hello and welcome to the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. Today's Thursday, January 11th, 2024. It seems as if though there's never a dull moment when it comes to shares of Stronghold Digital Mining and the publicly traded Bitcoin mining ecosystem. So yesterday, at long last, the U.S. the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, we'll be getting to the U.S. Federal Reserve in a moment, but yesterday, the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, essentially in layman's terms, decided to approve the creation of spot Bitcoin ETFs, okay, and just to kind of keep it simple. So now we actually have these exchange-traded, funds that are focused on Bitcoin. So that's naturally going to be very good news, one can argue, for the price of Bitcoin. Perhaps not overnight, as I've consistently said, but over the short to middle to longer term. And what I mean by that is I'd be very surprised if the price of Bitcoin is below where it's at today 6 months from now. I'll be surprised. So with that as a backdrop, I think many of us might have thought, okay, trading is going to begin today. We're going to see the price of Bitcoin go up, which, by the way, it did before kind of reversing itself. And I think a lot of people, myself included, might have thought, hey, well, maybe now this is going to create an environment in which, publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies, their share price might do really, really well. And today we've seen basically nothing but red ink, so to speak, right? I took a look. Every publicly traded Bitcoin mining company that I happen to follow, and by follow, I just mean on my iPhone, I have their ticker symbols plugged into the Stocks app, so I can kind of see, like, hey, what direction are other companies in the ecosystem, hey, what direction are they moving in? And that's a useful thing when we see Stronghold Digital Mining shares, maybe going up a lot or going down a lot, just to kind of get a better sense. Hey, are we moving with the industry, or is there something specific to Stronghold that we need to maybe delve into? But when I say follow, I don't really follow other publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies. I simply take a look at where their stock price happens to be. And today I saw nothing but, down numbers, right? Including for shares of Stronghold Digital Mining. Why might that be? Well, I don't have an exact answer. I do, however, have an educated guess, okay? And my educated guess is that the inflation data that was released earlier today seems to suggest that the fight, at least here in the United States, to bring inflation back down to 2% is maybe stalling out a little bit, or perhaps not moving as quickly as had been anticipated. So the argument one might make is that the U.S. Federal Reserve, I promised we'd get back to talking about them, that the U.S. Federal Reserve might have to keep rates higher for longer, or even potentially continue to raise rates even further from where they are right now. And right now they're at about roughly, say, 5%. So that kind of resulted in a bit of a domino effect, right? So imagine you're thinking to yourself, okay, hey, does the Fed need to do more by way of raising interest rates higher? Are rates going to stay higher for longer? So you start thinking that way, and that, for reasons that are beyond the scope of today's broadcast, generally don't bode well for tech equities, or equities as a whole, one could also argue. And because publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies, of which Stronghold Digital Mining is one, tends to get lumped in with tech equities, we, along with a lot of other tech stocks, along with a lot of other companies in the publicly traded Bitcoin mining ecosystem, we traded lower today. I am cautiously optimistic that because it's an election year and because there are a myriad of other factors at play here, all right, I'm cautiously optimistic that the U.S. Federal Reserve will probably not raise rates any further, but by contrast may conceivably just maybe move a little bit slower insofar as lowering rates, unless we get inflation data that would really seem to suggest, okay, we're back on the path to inflation moving lower. Now, I mean, I personally think that in some ways, this fight against inflation is probably not a fight the U.S. Federal Reserve is emotionally or mentally equipped to truly fight and win, because it's just so incredibly painful to ultimately, imagine like rates going from 5% to like 8% or 10% in an effort to really, 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 crush inflation. Now, maybe that doesn't have to happen because the U.S. economy potentially rolls over into a recession, right? That's a possibility. There are a lot of economic numbers that don't get publicized a lot that would seem to suggest that the economy, though strong at some level, is perhaps not quite as strong as one might think. And we're not going to get into those details in this broadcast. So I'm both grateful that the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission finally approved, a spot Bitcoin ETF. In fact, I think they approved 11 of them. So that's going to be a really positive thing for Bitcoin. I am somewhat not concerned because I've seen this before, but I am reminded of how important the Bitcoin network hash rate can be. I'm looking at our dashboard at Ziner.com, and I see here that the network hash rate is at about 630. The result is hash prices that are just over 7 cents, which, by the way, that's good. That's not a bad number. But I did see at a couple different times earlier today that hash prices were below 7 cents, which, that can start to get a little bit less, less good, for lack of a more dignified way of describing it, right? It's kind of less good when hash prices are below 7 cents. It is more good. Like my English, it's more good when hash prices are above 7 cents. So we'll see what happens here. Price of Bitcoin around $46,000 a coin. At one point I'm pretty sure I saw the price of Bitcoin closer to $49,000 a coin earlier today. So let's let the dust settle. Let's let this inflation data kind of work its way through the markets. I did see that shares of Stronghold as well as other companies, they kind of started to bottom out and sort of turn the corner and kind of rise a bit, above the lows of the day, which I think is a very positive thing. From an overall operations perspective, based on what I've seen today, generally speaking, it looks like Stronghold is doing really, really well. But I'll tell you what's going to really be awesome. It would really be awesome if tomorrow, Friday, January 12th, 2024, if this hasn't happened already as I'm creating this broadcast, it would be really awesome if we got an update regarding the carbon capture initiative, which is in the process of being tested and presumably rolled out at Scrubgrass, which is, of course, one of Stronghold Digital Mining's 2 mine waste to energy facilities here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. If not tomorrow, then hopefully next week or at some point relatively soon. I can't begin to tell you how underwhelming, if that's the way I'd like to say it, underwhelming it might feel to not hear anything about the carbon capture project until the Q4 2023 investor presentation, which would presumably take place sometime in March, talking about, how Q4 of last year was and maybe even discussing full year results. It would really kind of not, I don't know, like that would seem very unusual to me if we were to wait until then to hear about what's going on with regard to the carbon capture project. This is something that's a really, really big deal. At least to me it is. I know without a shadow of a doubt, it's a really important deal to Stronghold Digital Mining. I think the issue now is, hey, when do we communicate something about this project? And I am probably in the camp that would say, you know what? Even if we don't have perfect data just yet, even if we don't necessarily have the final sort of like engineering schematic of how we're going to put these carboliths together to maximize carbon capture, even if we're not quite there yet, it could be useful to at least communicate something with the market as it relates to the carbon capture project. I'm just in that camp. I also respect and understand that it makes sense, it does make sense, to maybe wait until, there's a lot more data to reveal. But the reason why I ultimately am not in that camp is because what if it takes until March for that additional data to be there? That's kind of a long time to just let this very, very, I think, important, exciting topic for which we had like an entire investor analyst day at the NASDAQ market site with so much excitement and enthusiasm on December 12th of 2023, about a month ago. I mean, we had all that momentum, all that, that excitement. We did this private placement, at the end of December. I mean, there's all this, I think there's a lot of question now about, okay, we've heard about the Bitcoin mining machines that we're buying, and that's awesome. How many carboliths are we going to potentially be able to assemble with a portion of the money that we raised? I think that's also going to be really exciting and interesting. And I think that that's information that, again, I'm sort of in the camp of saying, why not just give an update a little bit sooner than later? So we'll see if something comes out tomorrow. If it has not perhaps already come out today after the market closed, I haven't checked. And and we'll hopefully get a little bit more insight as to what's going on. You know what? Since I'm just looking right now, let's just see in real time. The last news release was on January 2nd. So let's see if we hear something tomorrow or at least in the next week or two. Okay, with all of that said, let's stay positive, which I know can be hard to do sometimes when we see our stock doing what it's doing. Let's be great, and we'll see each other again tomorrow.